There's no doubt that Vortex will go down in history as one of the most sorely missed roller coasters of all time. The story of Vortex is a story of redemption, success, and sudden demise. And today, we're going to take a look at the rise and fall of this multi-looping roller coaster right here on Theme Park Crazy. In the early 1980s, Kings Island in Mason, Ohio was riding high on the success of their newest roller coaster, the Beast. This massive wooden coaster shattered records and was a critical and financial hit for the park. Goosebumps author R.L. Stine even wrote an entire novel based on the attraction. With the Beast bringing in the crowds, Kings Island was looking for a new coaster to add even more flair to its lineup. At the time of the Beast's opening, the park's lineup consisted of 4 roller coasters. One of these coasters, named Screamin' Demon, was made by American manufacturer Aero Development. This prototype model, known as a launch loop, is often stated to be the first launch steel coaster ever built. Aero's knack for innovation made their attractions greatly desired by the amusement industry, and in 1980, Kings Island would once again work with Aero on a brand new prototype, a suspended roller coaster named the Bat. The coaster would have a Dracula-style theme and feature several impressive aesthetics. First, the coaster would be installed in an unused plot of land on the north side of the park. This large area would provide the attraction with a backdrop of trees, making guests feel like a bat swooping through the woods. Meanwhile, the ride station would resemble a Victorian mansion, with pointed roofs that really stood out among the park's buildings. Finally, the detailed trains would be carefully sculpted to resemble bats. The coaster drummed up quite a bit of buzz before its opening. During its construction, park guests had wondered what the mysterious upside-down tracked coaster would be like. On April 26, 1981, the Bat would hold its grand opening to the public. The coaster was an instant hit with parkgoers, who praised the unique experience of the suspended train swinging side to side. Unfortunately, despite its critical acclaim, the coaster wouldn't last long at the park. To put it simply, this coaster was plagued with issues that hampered its run, and I mean a lot of issues. Where to even start? There were issues with the trains putting too much stress on the track during the turns due to a lack of banking. There were issues with the computer safety system randomly shutting down the ride, forcing engineers to manually survey the entire track and reboot the whole system. There were issues with the trains getting stuck on the lift hill, forcing staff to manually evacuate the passengers. There were issues with the trains not hooking up to the lift hill properly, causing the chain dog mechanism to break off. There were issues with the ride's bad operations, creating lines of up to 3 hours long. There were issues with the support structure not being able to handle the ride's lateral forces. There were issues with the shock absorbers not being enough to prevent track damage. There were issues with the braking system not aligning with the metal fin that was for some reason placed underneath the swinging trains. There were issues with the initial restraints causing riders to bang their heads on them. There were issues with premature wear and tear on the track joints caused by the aforementioned lack of bank turns. There were issues with the ride opening late in the day just to close early in the afternoon due to a breakdown. There were issues with having to hand out tons of free tickets to angry guests who didn't get to ride it. And finally, there were issues with the train running way faster than it should have. All of these problems led to the decision to close the coaster in 1983, just 2 years after it opened. Both Kings Island and Aero Development were left utterly humiliated by the Bat's failure. But in the words of Chumbawamba, "I get knocked down, but I get up again." This line clearly applied to Aero, who immediately sought to move past the Bat's failure. The company would go on to improve their suspended coaster model over the years. Later installations like Kings Island's second coaster named the Bat would fix the issue by actually banking the turns to even the stress. In addition to fixing up their suspended coaster model, Aero would once again work with Kings Island on a major thrill ride. While Kings Island wasn't happy about how the Bat turned out, park officials were still willing to give the manufacturer a chance at redemption. This chance would come in the form of an all-new A-list roller coaster, and by 1986, development was underway on the coaster known as Vortex. Instead of a prototype like the Bat, this coaster would be one of Aero's custom looper models. This was likely because the company had more experience with these kinds of coasters, so there was less room for error. But the scale of this coaster would be much larger than anything the company had built before. At a top height of 148 feet, this ride would stand as the tallest full-circuit roller coaster on Earth. And with 6 upside-down moments, this would be the first roller coaster to feature 6 inversions. According to Kings Island's director of marketing Reggie Whitehead, The name Vortex represents how the ride makes passengers feel like they are under control by outside forces, and the word vortex perfectly fit the way the track relentlessly twisted its riders. This massive project would end up costing around $4 million, which was a huge amount for a roller coaster at the time. The coaster would be built on the former spot of the Bat, reusing its Victorian-style station. Its maintenance area, which featured tall openings to accompany the suspended track, would be reused as well. You can actually see how the track fit into those doors. After months of land surveying, construction, and testing, Vortex would finally open to the public on April 11, 1987. Along with it came an epic advertising campaign that fully did justice to the ride's scope and scale.
Kings Island introduces a new thrill ride that runs circles around the rest, that lifts you 12 stories into the sky before you plunge into the most twisted web of loops, corkscrews, and boomerangs you've ever faced. Feel the grip of Vortex.
The ride experience went as followed. After ascending the lift hill, the trains would maneuver a pre-drop section to put less stress on the lift. Then, after a bank turn to the right, passengers would plunge down a 138-foot drop before heading back upwards into another bank track section. This long left turn went straight into a brief airtime moment before another bank left turn sent riders downwards. This drop would straighten out before the train was set into 2 consecutive vertical loops. After a brief ascension, a banked right turn would head straight into a mid-course brake run. After a brief reduction in speed, the trains would twist through 2 consecutive corkscrews before another banked right turn took them into the next element. This element, known as a batwing, inverted riders twice, connecting a sidewinder and a reverse sidewinder together in the shape of a wing. With that, the 6 inversions were complete, and after a couple more bank turns, the train would return to the station. Immediately upon its opening, Vortex was a massive success with the public, but unlike the Bat, it would be much more functional. Its efficiency, high guest satisfaction, and thrilling appeal led to record attendance numbers for Kings Island. For the first time ever, the park had an annual attendance of over 3 million people. Arrow had certainly redeemed themselves, and the coaster would become a guest favorite for years to come. For decades, this coaster would thrill passengers both on and off ride. Passengers on board would be twisted through the layout, while passengers on the ground would watch in amazement as the train zoomed by. Despite its initial success though, many would argue that the coaster didn't age well over the years. Some passengers started to label Vortex as a rough ride. I myself got to ride this coaster in 2017, and I admit that I wasn't too fond of it.
Alright, I just rode Vortex and I have a pretty bad headache. I can't catch a break with any of these rides named Vortex. I have to say though, that was a lot better than the Vortex at Carowinds, especially because A, it was a sit-down coaster, and B, it was smoother. It's not smooth. Thankfully the headrests don't go up to your ears, but unfortunately they go up to your jaw, so I'd call this more of a jaw banger than a head banger, but just be prepared when you ride Vortex.
Still though, despite the grumblings of the occasional park guest, the ride was still extremely popular. Its presence on the midway was unmistakable, and it was truly a beautiful sight to see. The way the dark track contrasted with the green trees made this perhaps the most photogenic coaster in Kings Island's lineup. As the years went by, nothing seemed to threaten this coaster's run at the park. In 2018, the park announced the removal of their flying coaster Firehawk. Vortex was almost twice as old as Firehawk, so many had assumed the ride wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. But on September 27, 2019, the park shocked its fans with the sudden announcement of Vortex's closure. Digital marketing manager Don Helbing made the announcement on the park's official blog, saying, quote, "I have vivid memories of seeing the ride take shape as it was being built during the fall and winter of 1986, and of my first rides on the coaster, 33 to be exact, on Media Day. While it remains popular, the ride has simply reached the end of its service life." Park fans were stunned and devastated at the news, and even many who didn't care for the ride's roughness lamented the removal of such a revolutionary attraction. But why exactly did the park remove it, and what does service life mean? Do roller coasters have expiration dates? The answer is a bit complicated. On its own, the term service life is mainly a PR term. Park officials use this as a blanket term to quickly describe a number of deciding factors to the general public. Such factors can include the coaster's age, how fatigued the track is, how expensive it is to refurbish, if the cost to operate it outweighs the profits it generates, or if they just want to use the space for something new. Some speculated that the ride's age required track refurbishments that would have been far beyond the park's resources. But while metal fatigue is a real thing, there's no official word on why exactly the ride closed. Think of it this way. If a park were to say it's old and we don't want to pay to refurbish it, or we just felt like taking it out, that would give a bad impression to customers and sponsors. By saying it's reached the end of its service life though, that lets your guests know that you don't want to take it out, but all good things come to an end. Regardless of the exact reasoning, the coaster would hold its final rides on October 27, 2019. Demolition would begin soon afterwards, and within months, it was all gone. As a tribute to the coaster, Kings Island would actually sell some of the cut-up track sections as memorabilia. Suffice to say, these sold pretty quickly. It's undeniable that Vortex was a true innovator for its time. From being the first coaster to go upside down 6 times to helping Kings Island draw 3 million people for the first time, one can easily argue that it shaped Kings Island into the must-visit park it is today. Nowadays, there are more than enough amazing attractions worth checking out at the park, but while Vortex is gone, it definitely won't be forgotten. Before we wrap things up, I just want to give a special shout out to my new Patreon supporters. Verbal shoutouts start at the gold tier, so if you don't hear your name, it will be listed at the end of the video. Here's a special shout out to Ian Solknick. Thank you all so much, and if you want to support me on Patreon, you can do so once again at the link in the description. Thanks for watching, everyone. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or you can check out my website at themeparkcrazy.com. This is Theme Park Crazy, and I'll see you all next time.